Chuck from Monocoque Metalworks. I'm here tonight with a very special E-Type. And before I forget, this car is available for sale as a project for restoration. Today is June 7th, 2022, and this car rolled off the assembly line at Browns Lane exactly 61 years ago on June 7th, 1961. And if you know E-Types, you'll realize that that is pretty early. And yes, this is one of the first 500 outside latch cars, but it's also one of the first 100 left-hand drive roadsters. Now this car is owned by one of our customers. He purchased the car in 1983 as a restoration project, but he never got to it, and it's been sitting safely in his garage for 39 years. What's great about this car is that for as early as it is virtually unmolested. It is all original, fully numbers matching. This is the original paint. There's one respray over the original paint, but some of the original paint is shining through. So we're gonna go ahead and do kind of a combination video of a sales video, but also showing you all of the early features of this car. And let's go ahead and start with the outside latch mechanism itself. Now, inside the car, on the side of the console, is a little pouch. That's where they keep the outside lock key. This is the original key to this car. And if you come around here, I'll show you how it works. You just take this, which has a pointed square end, you stick it in this hole, and normally there would have been a little chrome flap here, like a teardrop cover. You stick it in there and turn it like that, a quarter turn. Now you stay there, I'll come over here and do the other side. And I'll show you how this mechanism works. These are the same mechanisms that they would put on like the rear spats of a Mark 9 sedan. You just stick that in there, and then this goes like that and reaches down and grabs a little pin that's mounted to the inner sill. Now the original colors on this car are Opalescent Bronze. Opalescent is Jaguar's word for like a very fine metallic, with a beige interior and a French gray top. And French gray seems to be kind of a cream color, basically. But that combination, the opalescent bronze, beige with a French gray top, that was a very common combination for these early outside lock cars. And people don't give opalescent bronze the respect that it really deserves. If you come over here, you can see this paint is darker than it should be. It's had a respray and lacquer, and I think that's darkened up some. But right there on the wing, you can see the original color is lighter and a little more metallic. And it really looks great when it's new against new chrome. Now, this, of course, is the original bonnet to this car, and it's got the welded louvers that everyone talks about. You can see that's a separate panel that's let in. And if you look on the underside, you can see they just kind of have a frame around them, and they're spot welded in. But also, these early bonnets, a lot of people don't realize, they also have welded flanges. These flanges are glued on most E-Type bonnets, but on these early bonnets, you can see they're spot welded. Now, another thing that's special, just because I'm a metal guy, you can see this little flange here is folded around this way. On the later cars, I guess they figured out they didn't want to look at that, so they folded it in this way. That's just one of the many things with these early cars that you'll see. For example, over there, the heater fiberglass duct is painted bonnet color, was obviously on there and sprayed with the bonnet. In later cars, it's just on there as a black piece. Now, making these bonnets was very difficult for Jaguar. Spot welding in those flanges turned out to be a real problem. And if you look here, you can see the spot welds on there, but that's not how they were when they were delivered. These have developed either from rust building in here and expanding the joint, or from just pulling and shaking as the car goes down the road. But originally, they spot welded those and they sanded these down and made this very thin. And that's why you get a lot of rusting out in these bonnets. Now, the early cars had the headlamp scoops painted the same body color, and you can see that in there. This is all original. This is also the original glass. You can see the triplex logo is sideways. Usually they're down here more in the middle and pointed that way. These early cars, they're sideways and up in the corner. Just this piece of glass is worth a fortune. And then the bumper is all original. The turn signal's original. And I actually have one of the original broken turn signal lenses. You'll see these lines in here. This is what an original early E-Type lens looks like. All the ones you have now have these little lines in there this way, but these go like this. Now, another thing about these bonnets is that they have a much smaller air intake opening. Now, unfortunately, we have suffered some damage up here, and when we got the bonnet, it was opened and the support member of the lower balance was twisted and rusted, and so we had to doctor this up a little bit. Also, someone had cut off the wing from here forward, and so we've just taken another section of an old wing, put it on here for now. If I was doing this car here, I would doctor that up perfectly, or I might even replace it with another outside lock wing. I do have some. But at any rate, we just got this together to make it look presentable and be able to get it on the car, open and close it, and get the pieces on. But normally the mouth is smaller, and that can be fixed up. There's very little filler in there. Someone smeared some filler in there, and we just put some primer on it. But another thing about these cars is that these bonnets were made with a completely different set of molds than the later bonnets. And the power bulge has a completely different shape. You'll see it's very pointed, and this one actually looks a little asymmetrical, but this is completely original. And see, look at that point. Now I'm gonna go ahead and pan back here and grab this 62 coupe in the shot, and you're gonna very quickly see what I mean about the pointed power bulge. See, this one here has a very rounded front on the power bulge, whereas this one over here is, sorry, my finger changes the focus, is very pointed. And that's something you can't recreate. People have tried, and it turns into a real mess. So having this car's original bonnet is really a great feature. People go to great lengths to try to reproduce this, and we've done it here, but having the original is a really great start. Here's the catch for the outside lock mechanism. You can see it's just a very flimsy piece that's in a flimsy little location here on the inner sill, and these often tore right out. There's the data plate. It's smaller than the other ones. It's more like a 150 plate. And there's the numbers. I don't know if I can zoom in on them. I don't show the full number to anyone except the owners of the car. But all you need to know is 8750. This is one of the first 100 left-hand drive Roadsters. Now over here you can see the engine number is 1076. That's the 76th engine. And then here the body number is 1078. That's the 78th Roadster body. Now keep in mind, we're doing right-hand drives and left-hand drives at this time. Now, unlike other E-Types, the body tag is riveted right to the firewall. So there's the body tag, R1078. And also, unlike later E-Types, the early cars have the body number stamped into this bracket on the bonnet. There it is, 1078. So it's very rare to have this also. These brackets get lost, or most of these cars just don't have their original bonnets. Now down here, we'll get into the engine in a second, but while we're doing numbers, there's the original engine number on the head, 1076, and I did check it on the block. It's way down in there, so I can't show it on this video, but it's got the matching block number as well. Now on the gearbox, I have not seen the gearbox number with my own eyes, and we decided not to pull this apart because it's never been apart, and I didn't think that was necessary. I tried to snake a camera in from the bottom, and all the original heat shields were in there. So I'm confident that this has the original gearbox in it. Okay, there are so many features in these early cars that are different. Don't really know where to start, but I'll just try to hit the high points. You can see that there are 3 uprights on the throttle linkage here. The later cars only have 2, so this is the early linkage and the early manifold. Over here, the wiper motor is dated. I'm not sure if this will show up on camera, but that says 461, which is right in line for a car built in June of 61. This is all the original washer bottle. They're usually missing. That's also dated, and I'm sure it's original and matches with this. Here's the chassis number. Again, I'm not showing you the whole thing, but there you go, 8750. You'll notice it's kind of stamped toward the front. That is how they did these early cars, and then they started moving it back toward the middle. One really interesting thing about this car is that the bonnet carrier bracket is in black instead of opalescent bronze, and that is factory. I looked at that very carefully. It hasn't been replaced, and we know that because it still has the original studs down here. The later cars have a bolt and a pin. These cars have studs, and then you'll also see where that aluminum bonnet hinge piece is very thin there. This car also has its original Marston thinned aluminum radiator. It's got the Marston tag on it. This is radiator number 204. This is the original header tank, and you'll see it's got a small flange around it. Just original Cheney hose clamps everywhere. Someone pulled these plug wires off many years ago and just stuck them on the cam cover nuts. I thought about ripping this all out, but these spacers here look kind of original, and I'm just leaving the car untouched. And you'll notice it's very dirty in here, and that's by design. When you're doing a car that's this special, there's a large segment of archaeology in it. And so you want to leave this as untouched as you can until you start really getting into it, because you need to know that this was on top of this. These are the washers that were included, that type of thing. Now, when we get over to this side, you can see that it's got the early round brake bottles, but not only that, it's got the very, very early Nevo code caps that have the sending units in them. Those are a very rare animal. Now down here, we've got all the original master cylinders. They have dated tags on them, and those are intact. The brake bellows is a Kelsey Hayes unit instead of the later Dunlop. The heater has the thinner cover on it with the screen, whereas the later ones are a much fatter piece. The side panel has 3 screws on the top instead of 1, and then it has a little wraparound piece back here. We've got the early style RB310 voltage regulator, and that is original and intact. Looks like somebody changed the battery cable ends, and that is not uncommon. And then just once you get up into the suspension, most of that is basically the same, but there's very little differences almost in every single piece in diameter and the way it's put together. Oh, here's another thing. The breathers on these, usually it came out the front and then had a metal tube with some hoses that went over to an elbow that was bolted here. But you'll see that there's no elbow, there's no hole, and instead, it's just got this little piece of flimsy, corrugated aluminum tubing that just goes down to the ground and sprays oil down there. That piece of tubing is never still there, but you can see it's there on this car. All right, just moving back, we'll start to talk about the windshield trim. These cars have a very wide and fat piece of lower windshield trim, And then they do have this little clip here that ties it into a different, people call that the hockey stick, but that's the windshield pillar trim. So normally this would come down and come to a point. This wouldn't be here, and this would be a thinner piece. And then up top here, you see this little piece here, it's just a short thing, whereas the later ones, this comes back and kind of covers this whole area, probably to do a better job of keeping water out of the top. All of that, very rare, very special, all intact. Now the car has had a radio installed. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's also had these side mirrors installed. These may have been installed in the UK for shipment over as a US car. It probably were required to have side mirrors. These are original Walprus racing mirrors from England, so they may have come over with the car. Very common to have these bullet mirrors on early E-types. Then up here we've got the door chrome. Now it doesn't look any different than your usual Roadster upper door chrome, but the early cars have a step down here in the chrome, and everybody knows that about the 61 cars. But what they don't realize is that the super early cars didn't have it. So you kind of go flat, stepped, back to flat again later. And that's the thing where with a car like this, it's all there. So you don't have to guess about that and wonder. Okay, again, the interior is fully intact and all original. And just a whole slew of special things in here too. For example, usually this is cardboard with kind of a fuzzy lining. This is a hard plastic on the early cars. We've got the original shift knob here. It's very rare for that to still be there. Here's that radio. It's a Blaupunkt 3-band. Very common for these early cars. This looks like it came with the car to me. This ashtray is a little oval. The later ones have these little wings on them to make sure they're not installed upside down. And you can see this just kind of rotates around and has a little hole in it. But sometimes they put them in upside down at the factory, so they put those little wings on later. All of the switches and gauges are original. This little indicator strip, I've been told that this is different for the early cars. Miraculously, this is here and not broken. Now over on the steering wheel, you can see the wood has fallen off, and I've just left it right there for our archaeology. But that would go on there, and this is a fatter internal piece, and you would see the aluminum along the inside on these early wheels, and that's very restorable. You can get the wood for that. Okay, moving toward the back, you can see that, again, all the chrome is there. This piece here, the chrome at the bottom of the convertible top, is a very special piece that's thicker and solid, and it's got this little edge on the bottom. See that? That is super rare. Also, the top header panel has these little holes in it. There was a leather strap here that it would just clip here to rest. You would unclip it, fish it down through this hole, and then clip it down there to that wall, like that rear bulkhead. These holes are much bigger on this car than the later cars, and that's just an odd thing that everybody knows about the early cars. And then you get into like some of these side panels here. They look a little bit different to me. It does not have the hardtop brackets on it, which most Roadsters did come with later, even though they didn't come with a hardtop. They wanted to be able to sell you a hardtop and mount it right on there. This car has 80,000 miles on it. That's actually a lot for an E-Type. Usually we only see anywhere from 30 to 50. And we don't know the whole history of this car. He bought it from one of his neighbors, but there is a sticker on the front bumper that says U.S. Naval Research Laboratory, Washington, D.C. So that's kind of cool. You can just imagine somebody working there and jetting around in this. Now, since I've panned back here, I'll mention this is one of the original tires. It's obviously the spare because it looks brand new, but this is a Dunlop Road Speed RS5 that is a wide white wall. And that is what came on these cars originally when they went to the US market. And it does have chrome wire wheels. A lot of the early outside lock cars came with painted wire wheels, but this one is chrome. That might have been an upgrade when this car was shipped. So here's your fuel lid here. This may or may not be the original fuel cap, but it seems to be. It's different than other E-Type caps. And that's where, with these cars, you've got to keep everything as it is, because you think that something is some type of aftermarket piece, but it's just one of those first 500 pieces that you don't recognize. All right, let's go ahead and take a look inside the boot. Now I'm going to pull the little latch here. Hopefully this won't get stuck on me, because I did have it open earlier today. And the trick to it was this. There we go. All right. Now, you'll note here, these are the earliest style of the boot lid hinge. Come on in and get a close-up on this. I have another outside lock car here at the shop that is only 20 cars after this. And by that time, they had figured out that these were too thin and flimsy, and they took two of these castings, which are aluminum, and welded them together for a double hinge. And that's what most outside lock cars have. Now come on down inside the boot. Unfortunately, it's a little bit dark in here, but hopefully it'll show up better on the camera. These ribs that hold the spare tire and give stiffness to the boot floor, you can see where they are a two-piece design. All other E-Types, these are pressed together in one piece, but these are two-piece. And if you look here, you see these little clips? These are for the original handle of the Shelley jack. Now, we don't have the Shelley jack for this car, but that's what this car would have had, and the little handle would have been clipped in there. Obviously, we've got some rust. That boot floor is going to have to be replaced, as well as a lot of other work, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But come around here to this side again. We'll switch sides here. And go ahead and film the blister for the reverse light. You'll see that they hadn't quite figured out what was going on with the reverse light. This piece is riveted in, and it's actually come apart. It's riveted in with some aluminum rivets that have corroded and come apart there. Now, if you look over here on this back wall, this gets into the metalwork part of it. These pressings here are different than later E-Types. Only about the first 300 cars had these pressings, and then for some reason they changed that up. I haven't really figured that one out yet. This all looks standard, but inside the tank, the submersible fuel pump has a whole different mounting and bracketry. I'm sure that's all in there too. It's hard to know where to draw the line on this, because truly every part is different. And if we could start disassembling it, you get into that difference in the rear and in the engine and all the front suspension, and just every little piece was changed in some way after this first run of cars. This car will need a full restoration. You can see the floors are rusted out. We already saw the boot floor was rusted out. It's going to need substantial metal work, and you really should take a great deal of care with that metal work to reproduce all of the nuances of this early body just right. But like I said, it is all there. And having the original bonnet and the original metal, either to restore or to reproduce perfectly, is a big plus. So that's about it. I think we've hit the high points. Like I said, you can go on and on with the features of this car, but these E-Types are really great to do because there's so many special things about them, and there's so much of that automotive archaeology that's so much fun. This might be the earliest and maybe the only outside lock car left that's complete, numbers matching, all original and unrestored. So many of these cars have been restored and not done right, done years ago when the originality was not as critical and people didn't know as much about it. Of course, there's a lot of books that go through all of this, but a lot of them just have information that's kind of right, kind of wrong, not that exact. This car, you don't have to do any of that guesswork. This is a car you use to write the books. So it's a great project. It's available for sale. You can take it as it is, or it needs a lot of metal work, and we would be happy to do that metal work here. We're booked really far in advance, but this is a car that I would take and put into the schedule. I'd love to do this. We're going to do it with the utmost detail, and when we're done, William Lyons himself would say that it's never been touched. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope that was informative to some of you. Just give you an idea about these really early cars. There's a lot more, and like I said, there's some books you can buy. If you're interested, give me a call. We'd love to find this one a new home, and whoever does it, it's going to be a great adventure, and when it's done, this is an investment grade E-Type. These cars are worth a fortune. Thanks for watching.